Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. We are live for the first Mealworms and More of 2024, and I was looking at some older data. We haven't done one of these since April, so we're going to give folks a moment to join. It started usually about 3 to 4 after. I'm going to do my best to make this video in audio friendly, but we'll get things kicked off in about 3 to 4 minutes here. If you are out there, if you wouldn't mind throwing a comment in to let me know we're here. I'm going to go share this to the Facebook group. Oh, asking for my password stuff, slow connection. All right, I'm going to turn this off. Sleep. I see a couple people out there. As you guys jump in, if you could leave me a comment to let me know the video and audio is working okay. We'll get started at about 3 after. Darlene, welcome. Darlene, can you hear me okay? All right, we're starting to see some people join. Sorry about the thumb there, just wanted to check the time. I'm going to pause for a moment and try to make sure I'm not running anything in the background here. Loud and clear. Thank you, ma'am. Cheryl, welcome. We are a little shaky right now on the desk. After I moved it into the new office, things are wobbly. I just haven't had a chance to mess with it, so I'm just trying to stay off of that as much as possible. But I need to check time here. Kayla, welcome, welcome. All right, we'll do one more minute and we'll get rolling. I'll tee things up and we'll head on out. Remembered from last time, I need to have water or something to drink because I don't usually talk too much or talk this much all at once, and so my throat's going to get dry. A lot of buffering. Probably my connection here. Cheryl, I have been extremely busy. Good busy, not stressed busy. Every now and then stressed busy. Let me turn the heater off real quick. Siobhan, welcome. All right, let's go ahead and get rolling. Hopefully the buffering resolves. I turned my PC off. Stopped everything on my phone, so hopefully we've got enough bandwidth to make it worthwhile. If we have any issues and keep running into them, we might pause and stop for now, but we will start doing these more often. So I was actually looking at some old data, but let me tee things off first. So welcome to Mealworms and More. So this is for the Mealworm Farming Co-op Facebook group. I used to host these every few weeks. Back in 2023 and the end of 2022. And then things got crazy hectic and I put things on pause. So we are back. My goal is to try to do these at least once every 3 weeks. If I can sneak it in every 2 weeks, I'll do that. And I'm going to vary the times and days so that we can mix it up and folks have a different opportunity to join depending on their time zone and where they're located. Facebook does record this. It'll record the comments here and get posted to our group. So you can watch. You don't have to comment if you don't want to, but just know that within Facebook, those comments are going to be thrown out there. And then I take this and put it on the Midwest Mealworms Midwest Mealworms YouTube channel. The comments don't come with the video, but I try to do my best to talk through those comments to give people context on what's going on, because not everybody is able to get on Facebook or wants to. And you guys are chock full of great information and great questions. So we want to make sure that we can spread that out there. Full disclosure, my YouTube channel is monetized. I was actually just looking at that today for the Mealworm Farming Q&A sessions that we've done here, the Mealworms and More, for the lifetime of my my YouTube channel has made $31 over, I think it was 10 or 11 videos. So it's not making tons of money. It's just out there monetized as part of my YouTube channel. So if anybody has any questions about that, please let me know. But if you have any mealworm questions, please throw them out there. That's our goal today, is to walk through any Q&A you guys might have, anything you want to see. The farm is open, so I ventilated that, cleaned everything out of the way so I can walk around without injuring myself as I carry stuff around. We are currently in the office, so this is the new office. We have not done a Mealworms and More since the expansion started and mostly completed. I mean, look at the trim behind me, right? Like, the mandatory things are done, and now it's just the little things, switches being replaced and relocated, covers being put in, trim being put on, things like that. So lots going on. Cheryl, did I get my frass tested? I did. End of 2023, December, I got most of the results, and then there was one thing. What did we have to add into that? It might have been the heavy metals, but the heavy metals were all good. I just haven't gotten the data and organized it in order to throw it out there and present it. But I will definitely do that. I don't have the info off the top of my head, but it was good balanced NPK. It was actually a little higher than, I think the last test I did was like 3 or 4 years ago. And so I want to say it was around a 3.2.3 balance there, NPK wise. No E. coli, no listeria, no heavy metal issues. So everything was pretty clean and honestly pretty nice. And so I just need to get all that data put together and then talk through it a little bit. But that's the goal, is to get it out there. I used Midwest Labs for my testing. The next round of tests is going to go to Logan Labs, just to get a different experience from a customer perspective. Midwest Labs gave good data. Don't have any major concerns with them, but the goal is to just kind of test out different labs and see what their experiences are like. And so I'm going to do one more test with just wheat bran and water, again, to work on kind of the baseline is what I'm calling it. And then I'm going to, like, as I start playing with different feeds, especially with the food waste scenario, seeing what that does through, or what that does for the frass, just to have an idea of how different nutrients going in are affecting that frass coming out, so that we could potentially figure out ways to tailor. We did it at OSU Labs. Okay. Look at different ways to, like, tailor the frass for folks that might want to use it. So if they want something lower in nitrogen, what could we potentially, feed them or do with them to get lower nitrogen, et cetera. But the baseline needs to be established, and then we know what we're working off of and can go from there. Da, 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 da. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to put together a pupa bridge while I was here. Wanted to do some testing with that. I grabbed one from Scott recently, and needed to glue it together today. The glue's over here somewhere, I think. That's probably why I didn't think of it, is I need to find the glue. It's another thing I have to do. But always something. Lucas Worms, welcome. It's good to see you. It's been a while. It's been a while. Yes, throw out some questions. Let's tackle them. Oh, I dropped my lid. That's where that one went. Da-da-da, da-da-da. How do you size for selling? What size do people want? It depends on who you're selling to, Darlene. So what I have found is that folks who want the larger worms are the ones who are buying them from pet stores or fishing supply stores for bait or for reptile feeding. And so they're used to getting extremely large mealworms. I'm not aware of a natural way to do that. There's a juvenile hormone that you can apply that makes them, forces them to not pupate, so they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how those larvae are produced, unless there's a way to do that naturally. That would be great if there was. And so what I found is that naturally they're not going to get that big, because once they start getting that big, they want to pupate. And when I tried selling large, an inch long to compete with those stores and those products, my larvae would pupate. Even in refrigerated storage, folks would get them and they would complain about getting pupa. And so I switched things and started selling the 3/4 inch average. And so what I do to size for that is use different size mesh based on what's medium for me to get that 3/4 inch average. And then I use currently right now I'm using my DIY sifter to separate that stuff out. So we'll head into the farm and take a look at that. But my process is really based around selling that 3/4 inch average size. Other places are going to sell smalls, mediums, large, and their numbers might be different than that. But I'm going to turn you around. Lucas, I see your question there. Let me finish this one. Let me turn you around. So that is the DIY sifting tower. So the top two are manual. This is a 1/8 inch average mesh chicken wire. This is not precise. And what I mean by that is, if I can get it to where you can see the grid, it's not super precise, right? Like these are varying in sizes. And so the goal of this, though, is to let the mediums through and get to that sifter. You can actually see some larvae in there. I was just sifting before we started here. And that one, again, this one is manual movement. And then the bottom one here is it's currently a 1/20th mesh or a number 20 mesh. And that allows the frass to get through. It does allow eggs and extremely small larvae to get through. But right now I'm not selling finely sifted frass. So the 1/20th does well from an efficiency perspective because it lets that frass through. And then I have a cloth like hood or sleeve to help with the dust, and then collect it down in a 27-gallon container there. The new sifter is going to be a little bit different than that, but same mesh concept, except I'll go down to a 38 mesh for the frass to make sure that no eggs and small larvae get through. Lucas, did you ever figure out the food waste caused more grain mites? Did you ever figure out if the food waste caused more grain mites like the BSFL did? I haven't had an outbreak yet. So I recently started, to give context to this one, I recently started using food waste from my kitchen at home to feed to the larvae and the beetles and see what went over well, what didn't go over well. So for example, the beetles did not enjoy orange citrus peels. They just didn't eat it very fast compared to the larvae that ate it like crazy. And so what Lucas is referring to is, when was that, Lucas? Last summer? It was last year, spring, summer probably. I started raising soldier fly larvae and feeding them food waste that I collected from the local community. And I had a mite outbreak. It's the only one I've had in this facility, and it stemmed from a container with black soldier fly larvae in it. And so what I believe occurred is that it came in on the food waste, because everything that comes in here from a wheat bran perspective gets put in those deep freezers out there. There's one there and there's one behind it. I can't see it because of the reflection of the fridge. A little bit there, but those two deep freezes get down to 0 Fahrenheit. And I've been putting everything in there for no less than 48 hours, and I haven't had mite issues from the wheat bran. And so there's the potential, what Lucas is referring to is, because I'm not treating that food waste, there is the potential for that to have unwanted things in it, like grain mites. And so I haven't had that issue yet. Somebody had a suggestion on, I think it was YouTube. of putting split pea flour into that food waste proactively. And so I think once I get to more scale with that, scale is relative. I'm only doing it in about 4 or 5 beetle bins right now, and maybe 10 larva trays, just depending on how much I have. And then, like right now, we're going through a lot of oranges at home, and so I can't use those orange peels in with the beetles because they just won't eat them. But I have not had any issues yet. As I scale things up, Lucas, what I will probably do is integrate split pea flour into it. I'm going to set you guys down and see how that goes. I'll integrate split pea flour into that mixture so that I can proactively tackle that, because I don't think deep freezing the food waste is going to be efficient or financially viable. No pantry moth issues either. No, not yet, Thomas. Haven't had that problem with the wheat bran or with the food waste, just to cover the full gamut of what you're chatting through. Lucas, are the beetles or BSFL more efficient? I assume you mean for eating the food waste. And I would say the black soldier fly larvae are much more efficient than the beetles, because once the beetles are satiated from a moisture perspective, they slow down. They slow down their eating. Because like if I put in too much too fast for the beetles, that they can't keep up with that. The larvae seem to do okay. Like I could put more in with the larvae. I just haven't tested that maximum yet. But the black soldier fly larvae are much more efficient at being able to take a volume of food waste and consume it before it goes bad. That being said, I think you could balance that depending on how you prepare it. Like the food waste I've been using is just roughly ground up. Ground up isn't even the right word. It's chopped up in a home blender, and so it's not even a meal consistency. And so I think if you were to grind it up and then balance the moisture content, the larva would go bonkers over it and probably consume it pretty quickly. The mealworm larva, the black soldier fly larvae are going to consume it as long as it's got good levels of moisture in it. They were much better at consuming unprocessed food waste. So like now I'm grinding it up to get it into the testing I'm doing now for the mealworms and the mealworm beetles. When I was doing the food waste for black soldier fly larvae, I didn't grind anything. I literally just took it out of the bucket and weighed it out, put, I think it was 6 or 7 pounds of food waste into a container, one of these blue trays, and 10,000 neonates. And then I had to separate those out a couple times until they were ready to be harvested. It was kind of like the mealworms, like they would grow at different rates because they would find different food within there, right? Like if I fed them something with, I think like deer meat, for example, something with a lot of protein, chicken, things like that, they would grow faster than if it was just veggies. It seemed like it. I guess anecdotal, visual observation. I didn't measure anything. The goal is just to raise them and get some experience with growing the larva. So I didn't track a lot of data around that. It was just sort of a play project. But if what I've read and talked to people about is, in order for that to be more efficient and more predictable, to get larvae equally sized in a container, grinding up that food source and making a meal out of it would be much better, because otherwise they can cherry pick what they want to, and one set of larvae can get on a piece of deer meat versus if it's ground up, it can be spread out across the tray. So yeah, I think efficiency really depends on what your goals are too. The goal with the food waste here for the mealworms is to see what they could deal with. I think from a nutrient perspective, it's better to get variant nutrients in there as well into the colony. And so I think that playing with that to see what they could eat in a day at different life stages is going to be helpful to then figure out how much food waste could I potentially utilize here in a farm this size. Lucas, I'm trying to read that comment here. Any tips on the supers to speed up the process? Heat. Um, I am real jaded about supers because I failed at them. I was raising them probably for a couple of years, and I enjoyed it. Velazar's here. Sorry, I'm excited. I miss him. Sorry. Supers. So I'm jaded because I failed. So I was raising them for a couple years. Things were going well, and then I started having die-off issues. And what I believe happened from then forward is that I had densovirus or some sort of virus, which is very common for supers, and just it spread everywhere on tools and things I was using, and probably trays. And I never could completely get rid of it. And so, in scenarios where I would try to get new stock, like I would order in new stock, I would get it, and within a couple of weeks, they would start dying. And so I couldn't figure them out. I don't know what happened 100%, but my suspicion is it was some sort of virus that clung around, and I just couldn't keep up with the die-off, and it turned into a big thing, and my focus shifted 100% to the mealworms, so I stopped. But they do well with better or with higher heat. It doesn't seem like they did well with a lot of moisture. I feel like that caused more problems. So things like food waste would be used sparingly. It didn't seem like, like with the larva, with the mealworm larva, you can put a wad of something in there, right? Like an apple core, you can throw in there and they're going to consume it and take care of it better than the supers, it feels like. I don't know. It just seems like, and it might have been the way I was raising them too. Like maybe they were lethargic because they were sick and they just weren't eating well. I honestly don't know. Hey, Velazar. But I do know it's a bigger issue than just me. Like, I know a lot of people that have been hit with that, where all of a sudden their colony just starts dying off, and it spreads. Supers aren't meant to be farmed in dense populations. That's not what they do. And so, like, look at their, I was going to say genetics, but look at their profile or their behavior, right? Like, they have to separate to pupate. They don't like to be around each other in order to keep the colony going. Like, they're not a farm. I don't want to say farm worthy, but like, they don't lend themselves well to condensed farming like what we're doing with mealworms. Darlene, would UV have killed the virus? I don't know. Part of what I struggle with is that I'm not a scientist. I don't have the skills necessary to try to figure that out. And so I would have to reach out externally and try to find somebody, and I just didn't have those connections at the time. I do know that, like, it's a big enough deal that large scale feed and insect producers are trying to figure out a solution. And so it's not something that just us small scale folks are struggling with. It's the insect itself. Like, there's just something going on there. I'm right now, I would say my firm belief is that at some point your colony could get infected, and without knowing what those kinds of things are and how to deal with them, it's just a recipe for pain later. Like, some people say, I've raised them for years and never had an issue. What are you doing and how are you doing it? Help us all learn from that so that we can avoid that as well. Because maybe there's something going on there. Like, Darlene, if somebody takes their colony outside to process it because they don't want to get the dust inside, they're exposing things to UV. Maybe that UV exposure is killing that stuff. Like, maybe there's something to that, right? But I don't know, unfortunately. So, and I haven't had that issue with mealworms. So I had mealworms and superworms in the same room, the same trays in certain cases. Like, I would swap trays after I clean them and use superworms, or use trays that I had been superworm trays as mealworm trays, and the virus or the whatever it was never crossed over. So the mealworms were fine. They didn't start dying in mass. They didn't seem to have any impact by it. Thomas, I don't know. It seems to be a good measure for respiratory viruses in animals like us, but it's not clear how the pathogen is transmitted. It might be cuticle contact, might be respiratory. It might be, I have to hit a button here. It might be an STI. It might even have roaches or something else as a vector. Right. Like, it's such an unknown. Like, how does it get from worm to worm? Is it something specific to them? Is it in the air and it just doesn't affect? Like, there's a lot to that. A lot. It feels like if somebody wanted to study them and focus on them that type of stuff is what's needed to figure it out. I do recall I saw a post on Twitter, X now, right? Showing my age. It was months ago, but somebody filed a patent regarding this die-off scenario. I can't remember the person's name. I feel like it was somebody from France or a French name. But it was about the Black Death, or something about it was specific to that die-off scenario. So I don't know if that patent got through or if it was 100% public. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It didn't have like, here's the answer or something, or here's how to deal with it. And I didn't focus on it because I've already transitioned to just mealworms. So, Lucas, for a while there was talk of darker mealworms as healthy worms and not dying. Is this an actual species? Siobhan's here. She's going to tell you yes. I don't know. I think that whenever I see the darker mealworm topic brought up, Darlene's here too. I feel like you've got some experience with this too. I feel like there's a couple articles or sources online that everyone goes back to, and there's nothing there about what specifically is making them, or is proving that it is a different species. There is a different name. Somebody's going to throw it out here in the comments any moment now. Something obscurus or something like that. But as far as whether somebody has those or just has some mealworms that are darker for some natural reason, I don't know how to test or prove that. So I'm not saying that those folks are wrong. I just don't have a way from a science perspective to have someone prove to me that the mealworms that they have are shown and 100% positive to be some different species of darker mealworm. So I think it would come down to like what would be acceptable for somebody to be proven that they are. Like genetic level stuff would be interesting to see, because I think the Tenebrio molitor genome was mapped, and like it was mentioned in the group. I can't remember the guy's name now. The scientist that posted it in our group. I've talked to them. My memory's terrible. What's his name? Andrew? Starts with A. Aaron. Is it Aaron? But he posted something about the genome for the mealworm. So it'd be interesting if there's a similar process that could happen for this darker mealworm. Red mealworms, I don't. I remember that coming up in the group at some point, but I haven't seen any, even as much information as what I just walked through for the darker mealworms. I don't know if I've seen stuff about red mealworms and they're like an official scientific name for them. I'm going to run back into the office and get some water. South Korea scientists have a study between the dark and yellow mealworms. I would love to see it. Is there, like, where's that posted at? Darlene, is there a science article or a link somewhere that we could go look at that? There is a South Korean company I'm familiar with that is raising mealworms with a full-scale automation type stuff. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, and I don't want to go look at it because I'll mess up my connection. Rainbow cells, what's them, Lucas? Red or darker? Tried checking eye color. Oh my God, did you guys see the zoomed in picture of the mealworm that somebody posted on the Facebook group? I think it might have been Jody. That, like, are they zooming in and looking at that? Rainbow cells, red ones. I didn't know that. I'll have to go check it out. Do they have listed there? Like, I would hope they have some info on what species it is and what the nutrient, like, why is it red? Is it a different, sorry, I just knocked that microphone. Is it a different nutrient profile? Like, what's the purpose for the red ones versus regular? I wonder if they're like, does the red, is it good for bait as something to see visually? And I don't know if that's true or not. Like, I don't know if marketing has gotten in my brain and, you know, like all the fish bait I see is flashy colors and yada yada. So is that gonna? No, that's not it. Okay. It grossed me out, right, Nicole? It was like you're just scrolling along in the group, and then all of a sudden, bam! that's not what you want to see without a little heads up, right? It reminds me of, I made a video recently, posted it to TikTok of the mealworms using a trending sound, just having some fun, and I laid my hand in the tray, and they started eating me. And I left one on, and I have a close-up video of him eating me. And I haven't posted it yet. I'm not sure if I will or not, but I started the video with a disclaimer of like, hey, here's what you're going to see. If you don't want to see it, please go away. But I haven't posted it yet. Velazar, and I'm not sure I will. I'm still thinking that through. Anywhere else but TikTok anyway. Velazar, as far as I know, different strains may have different color. Basically, different geographic locations may have different colors. Interesting. It would make sense, like, from a nature perspective, species evolved differently because of things like temperature and weather and all that stuff, right? So I wonder if darker mealworms, where are they geographically located? Do they do better in less light or more light? Or, you know, like same thing with red ones, like was it a defense mechanism because they lived somewhere with like red clay? I don't know, but it does sound like a Halloween video. I might have to keep it for Halloween. But it's one of those things that I worry, Nicole, around like people, especially TikTok. I don't think this happens elsewhere, but TikTok, it's very easy to take a snippet of a video and post it, right? Like you can stitch something or just download it and use it. And I would worry that somebody would just post it to be mean, right? To like grab that section of the video, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I don't want to put mealworms in a bad light, right? Like I recorded it because there's that conversation all the time of like, do mealworms bite? Should I, like reptile folks will say like you should pinch off their heads so that when the reptile eats it, they don't get eaten from inside, right? There's just a lot of that sort of stuff out there. And for the longest time, I told people mealworms don't bite because I'd handled them for years and never gotten bitten. And I remember somebody on Facebook, was very respectfully staunch about they do bite. They bite. And so I can't remember when I did this, but I took a tray of mealworms, one of those white dough proofing trays, and just put a bunch of mealworms in it. And I put my arm up to my like elbow up to hand in the tray and just sat it there and recorded it. And it only took a few minutes and I could start to feel them biting me. And sure enough, so I picked them up and just let them bite me. I didn't get close. Like this one, I zoomed in on it, like actually eating me. But I just let them bite me and then kind of wiped them off, and there was little blood spots. So that, like, there you go. There's visual proof right there that they do bite. And so I kind of changed a little bit. I swear I had a beetle bite me. I bet they do. Like, probably a defense mechanism. Maybe they're hungry. Their initial like reaction is to get away, right? But if they get stuck in a shirt, like that's the other thing. Recently, one of them, a larva got stuck in my shirt and started biting me, and I was like, "What is that?" And there was one stuck in my shirt. And so I don't know if I haven't tried with the beetles. I haven't tried that same thing because I'd have to like put something around my arm so that they could climb up to that point and not just keep going, right? Because those things like to climb. But yeah, and it's not like there was a lot of blood either. Like there's some small scabs on my hand from it. Like it wasn't gushing. It was just like, hey, you can see some blood. So. All right, we can go back into the farm if you guys want to. I just came back in here to sit down, kind of relax a little bit, honestly. But I'm going to check time real quick. I have a hard stop at 30 after at the halfway point, so 3:30 Central my time. But if you guys have any questions, let me know. Velazar, I dropped the ball on a lot of stuff. And so I have been picking things back up recently from a building perspective, not like this building perspective, but like building the blueprints of how to do this and sharing and all that stuff. And so you are on my list, sir, to reach out to once I get a little bit of traction. Like I'm trying to piece things together from a lot of different sources and places and things and people and whatnot. So hopefully more to come here soon. The expansion is done. It's just a matter of filling stuff out. I have a custom sifter being designed. I'm looking at backup options to test out. But ultimately, it's just a grind and go now. So, Thomas, I think it depends on how hungry they are. They prefer easy food to difficult food, and they'll only eat pupa if their options run out. Supers definitely bite harder than muleys. I never felt pain from a super bite, but my coworkers did. The supers, I don't feel like I ever had a super bite me. So I can't compare that. Sorry, I might have to sneeze here in a moment. But the mealworm biting me hurt when it got to a nerve. Like I was watching it and it really surprised me that like it was chomping on me and it wasn't painful. I could feel it moving around, but it wasn't until it hit a nerve somewhere in there. And that was not fun. But when I did that test with my arm, that was one of the things I did. I put them in that container and I didn't give them anything for a couple of days. So they were hungry. Like I was trying to get them to bite me. Darlene, publisher, Journal of Asia Pacific Entomology, Selected Breeding, Black Mealworm strain of Tenebria molitor. Oh, I'm not even trying. Well, I am going to try that because you got to practice, right? Linnaeus. I will. So I'll go back and look at that, Darlene. I don't want to mess up the live and my computer's off, but I'll go back and I'm interested in that. I appreciate you grabbing that. I'll put that on my reading list. Adrian, my family's just getting started on small scale. Only gotten 8 beetles so far. Adrian, we all start with 1 beetle and just go from there. That's awesome. I'm super excited for you. What are you raising them for? I started for chickens 8 years ago and never stopped. So my advice would be careful because it becomes addictive. In a good way, not like in a bad way or anything, but addictive. So now, this is the original farm there where that light is. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can get a different view where I'm not shining into your face there. That's the old wall. So that used to be a wall all the way to the floor. And then this back here was the first iteration of the farm in this building. And now where I'm walking at the moment, I'm headed to the front. This is all new, quote unquote new, area for raising. So, Adrian, it's so fun for chicken. Yep, chicken, they love it. One of the things I'm experimenting with, I don't have chickens anymore, but I do have quail now. And so I've started playing with feeding them larvae, pupa, and beetles. And what I find is I think it's because they're smaller. They'll take the beetles out and try to chop them up on the floor, but they're on a mesh, and so the beetles just go through. But they're eating the pupa and the larva. And now I'm experimenting. I started posting some videos recently on my channel. I'm experimenting with the manure. So the manure dropping into a tray of beetle or a tray of larvae, and the larvae eating it. And so they're eating it. And they're not dying. They're doing okay, but they couldn't keep up with the volume. I've only got 13 quail right now, and it was just a small tray of mealworms. And so I pulled them out just to kind of let them catch up. But my long-term goal, if everything kind of starts working, would be to have just a colony underneath the quail that eat the poop, and then a way for the larvae and the beetles to potentially climb up and fall into where the quail can eat them. So we'll see. Beth, your jelly. It's taken a lot to get here. I've had a lot of luck, a lot of help, and a lot of hard work. So this is eight years in the making. I did it as a side gig, just for the chickens for a little while. Then I produced more mealworms than I needed for the chickens and started giving them away, and then found out people would pay for them. And so then I started building and building and building. This is the 4th iteration. So some of my older videos are from the old farm, which was a much smaller, it was only 400 square feet total. And now we're in that back part there was 1,000 square feet. The whole insect room now is 1,800 square feet. And then we've got storage in an office that totals 2,100 square feet. So super lucky and pretty grateful. It's good stuff. Oh, I forgot to collect beetles today. I just saw the trays sitting there. I'll get them in the morning. It is what it is. All right, back to the liquid. I don't talk this much, usually. No problem. Author. Ooh, even better. Author. Thank you. How many trays with beetles do you have now? I just started scaling things up. So I waited, Velazar, I waited until I had the environment balanced. So what I did was I expanded into the extra area by putting up insulation and all that stuff. And then I opened it with the backup plan of closing it back up if the HVAC couldn't keep up with it. And so it did. And so then that was only maybe a month ago that was done. And so then I started upping the beetles. So I went from 50 trays of beetles to 100. I've got to get the beetle tray insert stuff squared away because it's taken me 2.5 hours now to do 100. I have 121 trays. Like it varies right around 100 to, or 110 to 125, I think has been the ratio. And so I can't go any higher because it's just, the labor is going to take too much. Thomas, you said a bit about size at the beginning. What about quantity? What denominations do you sell the most of? I was actually just thinking about that, Thomas, because I wanted to clean up my website. I would say 500 and 1,000 are very common, 3,000 and 5,000. And then it's just, increments of 5,000 from there. So like nobody's ordering 23,000 mealworms. It's 20 or 25 at that point, right? Like after 5,000, it's just a 5,000 step up each time. But I still have people that'll grab the 2,000 and the 4,000. I think the 4,000s are probably because the 5,000 inventory goes out. Like I'm wondering what would happen if I took away the 2,000 and the 4,000 just to make it simpler from a selection perspective and an inventory perspective. But the inventory thing is really it's the back end stuff. I should fix that. But those are the quantities that I think move the most. I could pull that data if I wanted to. I just haven't done it yet. But I'm the only one that handles all the orders and everything. And so I would say that the 5, 1,000, 3,000, and 5,000 are the heavy hitters. Cheryl, you're impressed. Thank you. Nicole, how involved is your family on the farm? Not. My wife doesn't do insects, so she doesn't do anything here. When I started the business officially in 2017, I was doing it as a side gig, and I traveled for my main job 40 to 50% of the time. And I would just prep the mealworms before I left, and then when I came back, I would take care of them. But that, I did that on purpose. I picked mealworms on purpose because it was a thing I could leave and not burden anybody else with. And so she didn't want to mess with the mealworms. And the rest of my family, I don't have masks. I'm not going to expose them to it until they're old enough to figure out, make those decisions, and make sure that they understand what they're getting into. And so it's not one of those things where like, this isn't something I would recommend, for people that want to, like the homesteady type scenario where you've got a farm and you've got, you know, veggies and animals and things like that, I would be very cautious about integrating insects and having kids involved, even other humans, because we always wear full face respirators myself, and if and when I have employees, they always have to wear them when we're in there working. I worry about the impact to kids in that scenario, and so that's just a hard fast rule here. Like, I'll do tours and I'll have kids come visit, and I love that. But like what I do now, in order for me to go in there, the air is flushed, it's ventilated, the sensors are there to see what's going on and make sure that there's not frass and dust in the air. So the kids are not involved on purpose. Wife, because she doesn't want to. How much help do you have? Oh, I was just getting into some of that. How much help do I have? Most of the time it's me. And that's by design, subconsciously and consciously. I do have help every now and then. I used to have a couple employees, part-time employees. One of them moved on, retired basically, and is doing a lot of really awesome charity work. Super happy and excited for him. And then I have some random times where folks will come and help with smaller things, boxes and bags, or just really simple, straightforward, like all the harvesting, all the hydrating, all the boxing orders, all the communication online. That's all me. The frass is dangerous. It can be. Like, it's one of those things that you have to handle the right way. I just gave a presentation at Missouri Organic Association. I couldn't record it. I was going to, and then logistically it just failed miserably. So I couldn't record it. But my spiel about frass was that it has the potential to be dangerous if you don't handle it correctly, just like any other soil amendment or fertilizer you've ever used in your life. When you go use chicken manure, you're taking the right steps to make sure you're not going to do anything stupid or potentially harm someone. You're using masks when you're spreading your dust products, right? Like, it's a very similar scenario with frass, in my opinion, that you have a certain way to apply it, take precautions, and everything will be okay. You reduce that risk tremendously. Thomas, what percent of your sales would you say are made up of the multiple 5,000 boxes, 20, 25, and so on? That's a good question. I'm trying to think. So I'm going to go just from website sales. Probably 50% of my website sales are the 5,000 and above, like 5,000 multiples. From a wholesale perspective, like, I do that directly with the stores. They don't do that through the website. And almost every store is either the 500 count cups, which I have very few of those. It's not very safe to ship those. Those are just real close stores. Or 5,000 count. They're ordering those 95% of the time. And the rest is just the cups. But the 5,000 count ships year round. You don't have to worry about heat as much with those. Cups are going to overheat when it's 60 degrees out. I mean, they're crazy. So those stores will order the 5,000 count and then break them down. That's their usual process. What do you filter your air with? I have a couple things that I do for air. So from an air filtering perspective, like, I don't have an official air filter in here that has a HEPA filter type thing. What I have is, well, I guess I shouldn't say I don't have a HEPA filter. So there's my HVAC, and that guy right here has a HEPA, I want to say it's like a 5 micron HEPA filter. That being said, I turn that off whenever I am processing or doing anything potentially dusty, because I don't want to burn through those filters. Oh, I need to turn the lights on to get back to what I want to show you back in the back. So to take care of the dust that gets generated, I have a dust collector. The one I'm using now is a Grizzly. believe it's a 1 horsepower, but let me get back so you can see it. All right, so I've got one of those. The 2-chamber is necessary. I started with a 1 and destroyed the motor because it got filled up way too fast. So the dual there, and let me get a better view. Let me just walk around here. So you've got the bigger stuff that goes in from the cyclone. The air comes in, it cyclones and goes down, right? Like these are wood shops. If you look up like wood shop dust control, that's where I started getting all this information. And so this guy, I usually clean that twice during a 4-hour session, so once every 2 hours. And it is hooked up to my sifting system with that white hose. It goes in the back. And then if I move over here and go down a little bit, there's the opening for that hose. So this gets about 90 to 95% of the dust that currently, like most of the dust is coming from this. The new sifter will take care of a lot of this by putting the drawers or the different levels connected together so that they don't have the opportunity to plume out, right? That's what causes all the dust. Not all the dust, but most of the dust. There's still some wheat bran dust in general, but I'll turn the HVAC off. And then if it gets bad in here, like it's got to be really dusty for me to do this, but I will turn on that exhaust fan. So that exhaust fan just ventilates outside. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And so like if you live in a city or live in, a residential area, don't do that because you're just putting frass dust to your neighbors, right? So that's something to be mindful of. At that point, you want some sort of filtration within the room you're doing that's all internal. Don't blow it out to your neighbors, even if you don't like them, right? Everybody's struggling with something. So, Velazar, what happened with the Chinese vibration line? It destroyed itself. It was not well made, and it didn't come with instructions on how to maintain it. And I'm like, my background is not with tools and machinery. And so I don't just know this with experience yet and with anybody teaching me, but it tore itself apart because the aluminum piece underneath, I think I posted about it. It shattered. It broke into 2 pieces because the bolts that connected the vibrating motors to the main area or the main, I'm losing my words. To the main sifting portion on the top, that part of it, the bolts got loose, and the vibration on the motors just broke that piece. The piece wasn't very sturdy. I talked with a couple metal workers after it happened, and they're like, "This is cheap, and you need to replace this with something sturdier." But then when I reached out to the company, they said, "Yeah, you should have been tightening the bolts." Where was that at, right? Like that'd have been great in a manual somewhere. So that thing died because it also wasn't working well from the perspective of separating and sifting everything before all this stuff got to the end and went through the output sections. And so I was getting like smalls, like really, small ones mixed in with the large on the top level. It just wasn't working. Now, if it hadn't broken, I might have had time to like play around and tweak it. But it didn't pan out well. And in retrospect, I think what the mealworms lend itself better to is having time to go through. So like the levels that I'm using now, let me get the visual here for you. And this is like the movement of the insect, right? Like I don't think this same thing applies to soldier fly larvae. But for mealworms, what I find is the reason that I haven't connected these top 2 trays, these guys, to any sort of automation or mechanization, like this thing's connected to a Sawzall that vibrates it, right? So I don't have to sit here and just shake the frass, which I used to do. But what I find is these top ones, if I just give them a little one of those, it kind of, it loosens up what's in the top or what's stuck. And then it also gets them moving again, right? So and then they want to, crawl around and go down. And if this was constantly moving, that might help, but it needs to be small like that. Whereas that vibrational sifter was just constantly doing this, and they were all going down. They didn't have an opportunity to get into the sifting scenario. So that's as articulated as I can be at the end of a day when I've been harvesting and I'm kind of tired. Just doing a quick time check. I got 5 minutes left. Cheryl, I have a small she shed. Would a window fan exhaust help pull out the frass dust? A window fan? Yes, but you need to have an inlet. So that behind me, all the way down there, there's the fan, like right above my finger, right? And so I'm 60 feet away, and on this wall, that panel right there opens and lets fresh air in. If that's closed, then the air can't go out of that thing as efficiently. And it'll actually pull in air from under the door, any crack it can find. Because it's so powerful, it's going to start sucking as much as it can from everywhere else. But if you're wanting to vent that air out, you need to have an inlet that's letting that fresh air come in, and an outlet where that exhaust is going out. The thing to take into account there is you are pulling in external air. And so it's either going to be hotter or colder or neutral temperature, depending compared to your farm. So if it's 30 degrees outside and your farm's 80 and you turn the fan on, you're going to be pulling in 30-degree air that you then have to heat up, right? And so that's something to take into account, where your, whatever you're using to heat or cool could be cost prohibitive. It may be better to get a filter and to, get a filter that you can clean and do that routinely. That's one of the things I'm looking at in the future, just to see if it'll help with the air in here. I don't have an issue right now, but is there an air filter that you could get that is cleanable and whatnot? Okay, let me catch up. Thomas, do you count or weigh or estimate how many mealworms you get out of each beacon camp tray? If so, what's the average? I don't, because the starting point with the beetles is so different that the end point is going to be different. It's not usable data yet. And what I mean by that is the way that the beetles, and I see everybody's questions here stacking up, so give me a moment to catch up. Beetles will lay eggs, like 90 to 95% of their eggs in the first 2 to 3 months in optimal conditions. And then it plummets, right? So they're going to, in mass, lay their eggs over 2 to 3 months, and then, but what's interesting is over that 2 to 3 month time span, it's, a lot of eggs, or a ramp up, lots of eggs, and then a ramp down. And in a tray, in a system here where I have beetles of different ages in there, even if they're the same weight, they are producing a different quantity of eggs in every tray. And so to try to track the age that they are, the tray that they're in, all the way to completion is extremely difficult for a one-person show, and in my opinion isn't a worthy piece of data to try to collect. I think it's better to try to get more precise at the beginning with what you're starting with, from a density, male, female, right? Like that comes into play too, and age, to try to, maybe it's better to collect the eggs and put them into a tray, as opposed to what I'm doing now with just having trays of beetles and moving them. It's just not a usable set of data, in my opinion. And I'm curious what you think about that, because I know you're very heavily data driven. So curious what you might think there. Okay, let me try to catch up. Beth, I'm currently at Beth's. How can I tell the difference between frass and smaller bits of wheat bran? Wheat bran is going to be a different color, generally speaking. Sometimes they'll look the same, but frass is a pellet. It's round. And so if you have a camera and you can get in close enough to it, you can look at that to see, it's very unlikely that your wheat bran is going to have pellets, right? And so when you zoom in on it, you can hopefully see a difference between, hey, is there any wheat bran in here? If you have wheat bran, like the only reason you need to be really worried about that is if you are going to try to sell that frass commercially or to, greenhouse, like something official kind of thing. The alternative is to tell whoever you're selling it to, even if it's those greenhouses or something commercial, right? To tell them, hey, this is how I sift. In some cases, there's going to be wheat bran in there. But what I found is that folks don't care. Like, as long as they don't open the bag and see nothing but wheat bran, they're okay with it, because it's just more material in there for them to get into the ground and whatnot. Hasn't been a barrier from what I've seen. Cheryl, opening the front door. Yes, you could open the front door and ventilate that way. Make sure that, like, geographically, that's not the right word for what I'm thinking. But like, the door and the window aren't next to each other, right? Because then you're just blowing out, and it's doing that, right? Like, separate sides of your she shed, ideally, to do across what you're doing. Don't stand in the way of the frass being drawn, right, to get it all over you. Think about that. But yes, opening the door would facilitate what you're talking through. Wally, hey, good to see you, Wally. We're like, I'm gonna wrap it up. I didn't publicize this one super well. I will get better at that and do that more frequently, like I did a long time ago. I actually looked when I started this one. The last one was in April of 2023. So I'm going to try to do these every few weeks, maybe a little bit less than that, just depending on how things go. Cheryl, filter for the window could work. I think every filter I've seen is you put the filter and then fan to go out, right? So that could help. Between the frass, sifting with a 500 400. Yep, if you sift with a really tiny mesh, that's 100% true. Or give them time to eat through everything, depending on what you're trying to do. All right, so we're gonna take the last couple things, and then we're gonna wrap up. You recently saw how important this is. The Velazar, I think, what's important, the tracking the data, getting that data, or density in those trays to make sure you can get that data. Sift 8 mesh, sift 10 mesh and weigh 12 mesh tray. I think it's possible to make a rough estimate per tray. The estimates I've been running with since 22 have been based on 10,000 per tray. What would be the goal? Like, what I'm doing now is I will, like today I harvested a bunch of trays, and I'd track how many medium mealworms I collected. And then I balanced that with how many beetle trays I had going months ago, however long ago it was, when those started, to see how that correlates. But again, that's going across the whole span of my beetle collection at the time. So last counting for me was 27,000 average. Is that Velazar? Oh man, I got to wrap it up. I just have more questions. I'm curious about Velazar, if that is, do you do one harvest at the end? Do you reset? Like right now, I will harvest a tray as it starts to pupate, ideally. Sometimes I get behind. I will harvest that tray, and I'll still have smalls in there that need to grow more. And so I'll reset. That's what I call it anyway. I'll put a measured amount into these beacon camp trays and wheat bran and let them grow some more. But are you saying like 27,000 over the span, or that one collection and then you're done, etc.? I can expect 10 or 10 if you do. Yes, but you need to know, like, how many are you going to start with? How many larvae? If you want to expect 10,000 per tray, how do you start with 10,000 larvae in there? Right? How do you, like? That's the thing. That's what got me to thinking through this. Like, it doesn't matter. Those beetles are going to lay different. And until you get down to the precision of knowing the exact male-female quantity for each tray, what's the actual beneficial? Like, is it 75% female, 25% male would be better? Would that get you the 10,000? Or do you want to dose the trays with neonates? Like, how do you get to the point where you are able to start with that 10,000 to be able to do that? So, all right. I'm sorry. I got to stop myself. Like I said in the beginning, this is going to process a bit by Facebook, and then it will post to the group. So all this is going to be out there and visible, including comments, so you can reference back to it. I will try to get another one of these scheduled in approximately 3 weeks to do another hour session, different day, different time. Try to mix it up a little bit. And this will get posted out to Midwest Mealworms YouTube without the comments, just with me visually here. And thank you very much, everyone. I loved it. I've missed these. So We'll get more of these out there. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to add them to the video after it posts, and we'll keep going. Thank you so much for all the awesome questions, all the support, and I'll talk to you guys soon.